Hi, I'm Angelica. I'm going to be a senior this upcoming fall. I'm double majoring in journalism and women's and gender studies with a minor in English. For my project, I decided to create a blog on Tumblr, and my topic was representations of feminist portrayal, basically in mass media, starting from the 1920s, early advertisements up until now. It's been going on for centuries. And I basically talked about how feminists have a huge disadvantage because of how we're portrayed in mainstream media and the effect that has on the big message and what we're fighting for, because people don't understand it since they would rather look at the way we're portrayed instead of the actual message we're trying to convey. So on my blog, femaleportrayalrepresentation.tumblr.com, I broke it up into a bunch of different categories. I basically did more than 20 posts just because there's so much that needs to be explained and I couldn't even get it all out there. So the categories I used were how mass media represents feminism as a whole. I spoke of meninists and people who contradict the feminist meaning and basically make fun of it. How feminists are portrayed in films, big Hollywood films, for years. I did positives and negatives. I also did typical stereotypes and mocking of feminism, which totally breaches any message at all. I included feminist agendas that aren't spoken about, that should be spoken about. Also, misrepresentation of third wave feminism, which is really important. And to summarize, I did a bunch of real goals of feminist women that aren't taken seriously because of media. Basically, media distracts from the message by making it into a big joke or portraying women a type of way in order for people to not really follow the bigger message. So, starting on the blog, I wanted to also not really preach, but make it known that there are other meanings, not of feminism, but there are other categories of feminism that everybody should be practicing. Not trying to preach the agenda, but these are basic human rights that people are fighting for, equality, and they are based upon this kind of getting women to self-hate, campaigns, advertisements, comparing, contrasting that a lot of men don't really have. So I wanted to include that. I did a couple of posts based around, in a world that strives off our self-hate, it is so important to keep loving and being proud of ourselves. And to that, I added a couple captions. This to me is really important, as I feel like me, and I'm sure plenty of other people, have been insecure, feeling competitive, especially with social media and things like that, where girls are insecure about their weight and like how they're going to look online, or who's prettier, or who's going to the coolest spots. And that's what media wants from us, I think, because that's how they're going to keep making money, whether it's makeup or clothing advertisements, weight loss, hair extensions, any hair products, like all of these crazy things that women feel that they have to have because the world makes us feel that way, because that's the way the media portrays it to us. So I had a couple of posts on that. That women feel like they have to be the best looking, the most educated, the coolest, the most understanding, the most laid back, the most cleanly, but still not being regarded the same as men are. Men aren't looked at in the market the same way as women are, specifically targeting for makeup ads, magazine ads, weight loss, etc. This is a disadvantage that we basically can't escape, and the media never speaks on it because it's controlled by the media. We've just been buying into it for so long, starting from the 1920s when the modern woman first came about, and most advertisements were targeted to women, not only because that's who was really spending the money, but also because they wanted to hype on women's insecurities, and it's been going on for years and years. So I also included some different cartoons throughout the blog about, they're more satire, I guess, but how women are supposed to be these meek, soft spoken people, or else they're looked at as kind of, they're not respected. They're looked at as bossy or too opinionated, too egotistical, like they know everything. Whereas if you look at it, if you look at a man doing the same exact thing, they're usually respected. And I just want to put it out there that this feminism is not about men versus women at all. But I think that a big problem with mass media is that they target these women so men feel as though they should be on the opposing team just to fit in, because it's just the way that women are portrayed. Men don't want to like really characterize themselves with that. And also a big issue for me is that when a man is a feminist, they're like, oh my god, everybody's like, wow, that's so amazing, like, when it's really just acknowledging that everybody deserves human equal rights. I think everybody should be a feminist. So that's also a problem. But I included some celebrities who, I'm trying to find them. Like in the new Wonder Woman movie, how the actress was actually pregnant at the time of filming, and it's just looked at as this huge box office thing, where actually a lot of feminists thought that it wasn't feministy enough, but that's a different story. The point is that women basically only had one of these superhero movies where men, time after time again, are constantly raking in these profits in the box office because they're given the opportunity way more than women. I included a post by Emma Roberts where she spoke of how the industry is so controlled by men, how she's only had 2 women directors in all of her movies. She said, of the producers I've worked with, 13 have been male and only 1 has been a woman. I went out for a work dinner recently. It was 7 men and me, but I am lucky. I have always insisted on being treated equally and have generally won that equity. Most of the problems I have encountered have been in the media, where I have been treated so incredibly differently from my male co-stars. Emma Watson is a big speaker for feminism, and she basically is saying, an actual quote from her is, patriarchy, it turns out, is prettiest when it's on fire. I discussed a couple of movies besides Wonder Woman, besides any of Emma Watson's movies. There's a movie called Syrup where it talks about the way women are supposed to be, and you have to be all of these things in order for men to not really place you, because then they respect you. A bunch of box office things. And then something that was also really important to me was comparing and contrasting. Meninists, there was a post where someone wrote, feminists in America cry about misogyny. Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia, a 13-year-old girl was murdered for trying to leave her abusive husband. In Afghanistan, a young girl was forced to marry her cousin, have children with him. There are a bunch of examples like this. And this was an issue for me because I felt like we were comparing the way women react to oppression rather than talking about the actual oppression. I understand terrible things happen to women everywhere, which is the problem. Like, that's what feminism stands for. That's what we're trying to fix. All of these things for women everywhere, not to compare and contrast and victim blame. And that's what the media wants us to do. That way nothing really gets solved. Feminists in America are not just crying about misogyny, but we're crying about all of the brutal ways women are treated everywhere. The horrible mistreatment a woman gets thrown upon her just for being her. There's different levels of oppression, obviously, of brutality, of crime, but what I find interesting is when somebody commits a crime, we're not comparing their crime to a bunch of other crimes. They're going to jail for their crime. Why is it that when women are oppressed, we're comparing and saying, well, this oppression isn't as bad as that oppression? We have to just acknowledge really what we're saying instead of rather pit things against each other, because that's a huge problem. I also posted a bunch about third wave feminism, how there was a cartoon about for first and second wave we were going for our equal rights and our voting, and then third wave feminism is like an angry girl. She's wearing a shirt that says, this is what a feminist looks like, and she says, oh my god, stop oppressing me by spreading your legs, you misogynist piece of shit. And basically saying that we try and victimize everything, that we're men haters. And I think this is a common portrayal by mass media and anti-feminist audiences, especially of third-wave feminism, because people like to say it's exaggerated, it's victimizing yourself, you're creating this rape culture. I've heard that a couple of times. So to me, it seems that feminism is deemed okay as long as it's under set terms, as long as it's kept quiet and not that outspoken, which is exactly why when all women have been deemed okay, when they're soft spoken and quiet. I feel like when things are aimed toward men or embracing sexuality or body positivity or trying to break any gender norms, all of a sudden the masses like can't handle that. These feminists since the beginning of time have been depicted as angry, ugly, harsh, mean, self-victimizing, male haters, lesbians, like those that's the stereotype that the media portrays, because then nobody feels the need to want to be on board with that because that's how they're being portrayed. But I feel like it's so inadequate. The bigger problem with the way anti-feminists share these messages is that rather than acknowledging that misogyny and patriarchy exists unfairly, they would rather make feminists look crazy for saying so. And at the end of the day, basically, my whole point of this entire problem, of looking at the problem, is to express how I feel when it comes to we divert all of these images and meanings and misrepresentations and portrayals of feminists and women rather than getting to the real issues, which is that we do live in this type of rape culture. We're not self-victimizing. This has been going on for years and years, and instead of addressing the problems, we would rather mock it, pretend it doesn't exist, say that women are crazy, or anybody who's a feminist is liberal and disgusting and not respectful, and all the million other things that I've heard, especially from my dad. So I think that was really the main part of my project. I tried to touch on every single category I could when it came to representation and mass media, and I hope you guys learned something.